Hello, everyone. Good evening to those in London, and good evening to those in Ghana, and a good afternoon to those tuning in from America. Good evening, and a very sunny welcome to you from London. We've had sunshine today, so it's good. It's good. So good evening, and welcome to this evening's GUBA Talks. And today's topic is on managing our mental health during COVID-19. My name is Dr. Pamela Nyki. I am a registered psychologist. I am also an associate fellow at the British Psychological Society. I work at a local authority leading on public health strategies. My current portfolio includes mental health, suicide prevention, tobacco control, smoking cessation, and workplace health. I've held other portfolio priorities, including cancer screening and all sorts of other things. But tonight, the topic is about mental health and well-being. We are at a time where, things are uncertain, things are constantly changing. That has an impact on the way we live our lives. It has an impact on the way we feel and the way we think. This evening, I'll be moderating the conversation, and I have with me some really interesting people with great expertise and great excitement and knowledge to share. And I will be introducing them all in a moment. For now, I just wanted to give a big thank you to Guba Foundation for putting this webinar together. Mental health is something that is important, not because it affects a select few. Mental health and well-being is something that's unique. It's not unique. It's something that's common to all of us. As long as you're alive, you have a mental health need. So for those who have joined, thank you for joining, and do come with your questions, do come with your comments. You can engage throughout the webinar with our speakers by putting questions through. Mental health is important because it affects the way we live our life. It's also important because not only does it affect the way we think and feel and the decisions we make, it also has an impact on those in our lives, those we live with. So without further ado, I will introduce to you our first speaker for the evening. And I bring you Dr. Yvette Arthur, who is a chartered clinical psychologist, and she's based in London. And I would like her to actually introduce herself, because her passion for all things mental health, and especially among Afro-Caribbean community, and also from a religiosity point of view, she comes with a wealth of understanding and a wealth of expertise. So welcome this evening, Dr. Yvette Arthur. Thank you for joining us. And if I could ask you to briefly introduce yourself to our audience.
Thank you, Dr. Pamela, for the warm welcome. And thank you to Guba Foundation and Denta and Sabrina for organizing this amazing and timely and very important event. I'm very grateful to be here. So as you can see, my name is Dr. Yvette Arthur. I'm a clinical psychologist. I currently work in an early intervention service for people experiencing a first episode of psychosis, and I work in South London. I also provide consultation to a looked after children's home within London as well. In my background, so I've worked in mental health for about 10 years and mostly been drawn towards mental health in the BAME community, so that's Black, Asian and minority ethnic, and thinking about specific understandings held in that community and how to strengthen those understanding so that they can support their own community, as well as introducing NHS models around alleviating distress. I also have interest in joining together faith and mental health and encouraging people to see that they can have a positive relationship, and that is within understandings and coping with mental health challenges. So that's just two of my passions, and I'm sure you'll hear about it a bit more as we go on further. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yvette. So there's a sneak preview on all that's about to go down this evening. I'm very excited. I had the privilege of meeting all the speakers last night, and it was a fantastic discussion. So I know that this evening we are going to have an honest and open conversation about mental health and well-being. And all of us have some experience coming from the Black and ethnic minority community. And the people listening to the webinar will also have their own experiences. So it's a time of sharing. As much as, our speakers all come from various fields of expertise, we also have expert patients. We also have people in the background who have got some valuable insight to offer. So I would like to introduce our second guest. And our second guest hails from across the pond. We have Dr. Bismark Akakpo, a practicing medical officer at Akakpo Leprosarium General Hospital in Cape Coast, Ghana. Thank you. Today we have matched your weather, so there's no jealousy coming your way. We want your expertise on this. If you would just kindly introduce yourself to our audience.
All right. Thank you very much, Pamela. And thank you for inviting me onto this webinar. I'm very excited to be here. I'm very excited to be sharing my little bit of knowledge with all of you and the wonderful experts that we have on this team. I'm Bismark Akakpo. Akakpo is the name. But I mean, Bismark is... But Bismark is fine. And I'm a practicing medical officer, like you said, at Akakpo Leprosarium. I'm just a general practitioner for now, but I have a huge passion for health promotion and then health education. And so currently I host the Ask Dr. Akakpo, which actually is a platform where we get to educate people on common health issues and also demystify certain myths that people carry around, which is very common around here in Ghana. So I just put things out and I try to clarify everyone's mind on some of the issues that we have. And also, I'm a great advocate for telemedicine, and so which I believe is the future of medicine currently. And so that's just a bit about what I do here for now. And I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for having me again.
Yes, thank you, Bismark. And I bring to you our third speaker. I smile just saying her name because she's such an amazing woman, and she uses her journey to support other people who may be going through periods of change or periods of trauma. And I will leave you to make up your minds about her. She's a wonderful woman, a woman of great strength, and she has great insight in mental health, having experienced the challenge herself, and she brings a wealth of expertise, not just from knowing about mental health, but from her own personal experience. So may I introduce to you Charlotte Crowl. Charlotte is a holistic wellness advisor, and there she is. If you will be so kind as to tell us a little bit about yourself, Charlotte.
Hi, thank you, Dr. Pamela. That was a lovely introduction.
Oh, lovely. Why?
My name is Charlotte Crowl. I'm a holistic wellness advisor. I use bioscans to read people's energy about the organ systems and their emotions. I also do a lot of talks about my own personal journey with cancer, which I had when I was 17. And I also experienced mental health issues when I was going through that, and cancer as well. Yeah, that's me really. And I'm also author of a book called Cancer, The Hidden Truth.
Great, thank you, Charlotte. And we have our last speaker for the evening, and that's Mr. Jeremiah Jiagge-Takyi. Jeremiah is the founder and CEO, and he has got some really useful guidance and advice and information. And I'm going to allow him to introduce himself and how he connects with the mental health world. Welcome, good evening, Jeremiah.
Thank you, Ricardo. Sorry, just clearing the throat. So, guys, I'm a personal trainer in here. Now, maybe some of you may be thinking it's an odd place for a personal trainer to be in a mental health awareness webinar, but as most of us are experiencing, physical activity has such a high impact on our daily lives. And it's more evident now that due to the lockdown, we've been restricted from being able to do a lot of the physical activities that we took for granted, say going to the gym, going swimming. And then now everyone's starting to realize the importance of those, especially when you think of how it affects our bodies, which then affects our minds. Because when you do exercise, you get those endorphins released into the body that makes you feel good, that makes you feel better, and that also improves your mental health and well-being. Hence, I'm here just to give you tips and tricks and any advice that can help you to deal with any situations that you need physically to help get that mental health on track. And yeah, for me, in terms of my expertise, I'm also a graduate sports therapy, so I did a little bit with sports psychology as well. I've had some background in that, as well as rehabilitation with musculoskeletal injuries and also with any sports related injuries. And then also I am now um a personal trainer at David Lloyd's for 2 years currently and ongoing until the gyms are back open, and then I can go back to do what I do best. Yeah, that is it for now.
I've just realized I was talking while my microphone is on. Rookie mistake. So I thought we'll kickstart this conversation quite lightly. We'll kickstart off with a discussion about why you're spending your evening with us this evening. For us in London, it's a lovely evening. You could be out there, enjoying yourself while social distancing. But you've chosen to be here this evening. It's Mental Health Awareness Week, and you've chosen to be here. Why, to you, is mental health important to discuss, especially at this period of time? I'm going to go with Dr. Bismark. Why have you chosen to be here this evening during Mental Health Awareness Week?
Yes, I mentioned it to Sabrina previously that I feel like there's very little talks that is ongoing about mental health, and especially in Ghana, when mental health is mentioned, everyone quickly thinks about, or the mind quickly goes to the person who is out there on the street, not looking very well comported, and that is all that everyone knows about mental health. But like you rightly even said in your introduction, mental health goes beyond that. And as a living human being, as a normal human being going around, everyone has a bit of a mental health issue that needs to be addressed. And it's the least that we can do by initiating this conversation, getting the conversation going, letting people know that it's all right to talk about mental health. And especially even during this pandemic period, which can be very stressful for families, for individuals, and can actually escalate or make worse any symptoms of mental health that they might be having. So I think it's a good way to just get everyone on board and then get everyone clear about it. So yeah.
Okay, so from a clinical psychology point of view, Dr. Yvette, as soon as I say clinical psychology, she probably thought she's coming to me. How is our mental health affected during this period of COVID-19? What do you think are the key challenges that people will be experiencing at this time?
Thank you for that question. I think it's quite interesting because the news and the media are speaking about a giant influx of people having mental health difficulties without actually kind of balancing it and seeing that actually this lockdown in some ways might be good for our mental health. Because in some ways we're learning to connect with others. We're learning to have conversations that are not quick text messages on an evening. We're learning to have Zoom calls and Skype and so forth. But in other ways, the negative ways that could impact our mental health is thinking about the impact of social isolation. For many of us, actually, our family, our friends play a big role in how we manage our mental health. And that's from attending church or seeing our friends at work. And it's such a big part of who we are. And therefore, not being able to have that direct access can impact our mental health. I think anxiety and worry is a big thing. And it seems to have calmed down a little bit. And I use the notion of people not overbuying toilet rolls as an indicator of that calming down a bit, but there's still anxiety and worry about, will I catch COVID-19? Will I transmit it? Will I die from it? Especially hearing about how the BAME community has been affected by the disease. So worry and anxiety, I think low mood is something to think about. For many of us, we manage our mood by doing things outside of the home, especially when the weather's lovely. And when we can't do that, we can feel trapped inside our home. I do believe that our routines can go out of the window. So sleeping at a good time, waking up at a good time. If we're not working, we immediately might lose a sense of time in doing, eating, and so forth. Yeah, so those are some of the ways that I would think of initially about the impact on our mental health.
Okay, thank you. We'll definitely come back to that topic, because you've raised a number of things about anxiety, about low mood, about changes in people's routine. And from a psychological point of view, we know that change is difficult. Change can be scary. Change can bring up a whole lot of also unresolved issues. It can cause us to kind of go back to things that we may not have addressed well enough. And I'm going to come to Charlotte with this one. So Dr. Yvette has mentioned a number of challenges, talking about low mood, talking about anxiety. I mean, from your experience, and of course our audience hasn't got to know about your experience in the great detail that I was able to hear from you yesterday, but from your experience, how does, especially this period of time, how could our mental health need be completely challenged because of the change that we're going through? And you went through a significant change yourself. So, what parallels can you draw between your experience and the change that we're having to go through now?
A lot of the stuff about having to be in lockdown and stuff like that is quite similar to what cancer patients go through all the time, where they have to be, on their own at home, where they can't really leave out, being scared they're going to catch something because their immune system's so low. And because of that, you're kind of thrown into this space of the unknown. And right now, we're all kind of in this space of the unknown, not really knowing, what's going to happen. And it makes you kind of feel like you don't have the control. And that's something that I experienced when I was going through my personal experience with psychosis. I felt like I lost control. And it was hard to explain your feelings because you didn't want to put too much on other people because you don't know what they're going through. And we're just in such a rocky time right now that, people are scared maybe to share their feelings because they want to put pressure on other people. So for me, those are probably the main things.
We'll come back to some of the strategies that we can start to think about that can help us in managing our mental health during this period. Jeremiah, in terms of some of the things that Dr. Yvette and Bismark and Charlotte have shared, what do you make of it in terms of how our well-being is affected during this period of time?
Well, I feel like our well-being is like greatly impacted like within this time. However, it's down to us whether it's a positive or a negative impact. I think Dr. Yvette rightly pointed out routine. I feel like that is the key thing that pretty much dictates whether we have a good mental health or bad one, because we're creatures of habit naturally. So when we're used to a routine and then you carry on that routine, everything becomes easier. It's almost like autopilot. So when you wake up 8 a.m., I have to do this, and that to leave. Think of yourself on a free day. It's very hard to actually know what you're doing. It's like you're almost restless because you don't know what to do with yourself, or there's something you want to do and you're stressed that you haven't done what you need to do, but because it's just open and there's no order or structure to it, then you just get yourself worked up about. However, if there's set things and set times for you to do, you have to be at work this time, this deadline is here at this time, it changes your mindset and it gives you that focus to aim, and then your energy is aimed and targeted at something where you can actually complete it. So with lockdown, we've now come to that space of like aimlessness. There's no end date. and we don't know what we're doing. Everyone is just in a sort of a limbo. So now it has to come down to us to set that routine for ourselves to then promote that mental health to make it even better. And it's literally simple steps. It might even just be, as Dr. Pamela, you touched on it as well, about the sleeping patterns. Even just waking up at a particular time can have a positive or negative effect on your well-being. If you wake up at 12 p.m. rather than, let's say, let's keep it reasonable, 8 a.m. I might have said 6 a.m., but some people will be like, what? But 8 a.m., that can change your entire day, because that then changes from you having, when you wake up at 12 in the afternoon, it's like, oh, I've only got like what, 6 hours before then it's 6 p.m. and then that's evening, I gotta go to bed again. Whereas 8 a.m. now you've got an extended amount of time to do the things, or even just set out what you're gonna do for the next day, cook a meal, go see a friend. And then you just start noticing that all just those little changes will start having an even better impact on your life. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. So we've had questions already that were posted on the Guba Foundation Instagram page yesterday. So there's already some questions that can help us with the conversation. But if readers, if audience have got additional questions, please do use the live comments and we will try and address them later on. We've got someone who's looking forward to the personal trainer insight. So we'll come to how physical activity improves our mental health shortly. So the first question that I will go to, and please do indicate if you'd like to take the question first, but if no one volunteers, I might have to pick somebody. So we've been talking about mental health. And Dr. Bismark, you mentioned that especially within the African community, you say mental health, and people naturally kind of go to the extreme side of, someone wandering the streets. But also, often when people hear mental health, they think hospitalization, illness. So who would like to take this question? When we talk about mental health, please break it down for us. What do we mean by that? So, oh, good. Jeremiah, go for it.
I was actually pointing to you. But don't worry, I'll take it. I'll take it. Well, for me, I personally assume mental health as our state of mind. And I know that's a very vague statement, but it's like our state of mind on let's say on a good day, like able to deal with the stresses of life, but you're still able to cope without any negative drawbacks or impacts on your life and the people around you. So with an example of that, you've woken up, you feel good, however, you missed the bus, you were late to work, all those little stress adding up. However, at the end of the day, you still feel like, okay, it's all right, tomorrow's another day, I'll look forward to that. You still got a positive disposition on life rather than a negative, because as you said, sometimes people always link mental health with something drastic like being sectioned, whereas it can literally be just that little nagging feeling in your head that's getting you down. Like not with any personal experience, but people with depression will act like they're having a good day, whereas it's a completely different scenario internally. So that mental health is that internal aspect of you, knowing that even though everything around you is can't even speak, is in a little bit of a chaos, you still internally can handle those stresses and can deal with it, or you have a system of being able to deal with those stresses and still progress with life. That's my take on it.
Thank you, Jeremiah. Thank you very much, Dr. Yvette.
I completely agree with Jeremiah, and I think it's important to separate mental health and mental illness. Now, we all have mental health, and as Jeremiah rightly said, it's the ability to cope with life. Life events, good and negative, they happen for everyone. No one is immune, even if you have all the money in the world, the perfect upbringing, you have 10 bathrooms and 15 bedrooms. You're not immune to negative things happening in your life. It's more about the ability to cope with these negative things that can come from internal, in terms of our coping style, our personality, things that we've learned from our parents, our carers, and also around us. If, for example, we live in an area that doesn't have a lot of outdoor space, that's got an impact on the way that we can cope with our mental health. And additionally, mental health is also the contribution that we can make towards the community and making the most of our potential. If we feel as though our potential is curtailed, then that will affect our mental health. Now, the way that we think about mental health is, from a psychological perspective, is that it's on a continuum. And so it's not that it's either you're mentally ill or have good mental health, you're actually on that continuum. So at any point in time, you can move closer to one side or another. It's not two separate categories. And that's important to know, because again, it's suggesting that we're not immune to experiencing mental illness, which is what we look at as the diagnosis, depression, anxiety, and then the more severe end of bipolar and psychosis. But it means that we can have challenges in life that make it difficult to cope with those difficulties that we experience as well. And also the genetic component as well, and biological component. So there's the biopsychosocial components to mental health and so forth.
So you could almost guess that I was just about to say, you've given us a whole heap of big English words. Please, I beg, what are you talking about? Break it down, small, you know? What are you saying? I've heard biopsychosocial, I've heard psychosis, I've heard bipolar. What do we mean by that? And how should we be looking at these topics that you're talking about? Because for a lot of us, we would not have that personal experience with it. And for some people, it would be quite scary to say, you know, mental health, because it will go back to, you know, traditional way of thinking of what mental illness is. Or for some people, it might be there's an auntie somewhere it's always the aunties. There's an auntie somebody somewhere who has cursed you, or that your mother's sister's grandmother's cousin, or the person you didn't pay well has cursed you. So when we start to talk about these psychosis and bipolar and biopsychosocial model, what are we talking about? And, you know, to be able to manage our mental health during this period, what do we need to know about this and this state?
Yeah, okay. Thank you for encouraging me to clarify. So the biopsychosocial model, it stands for so the bio bit is the biology. So this is thinking about genetics. And we know for a diagnosis, so this is a formal diagnosis of, say, psychosis or schizophrenia. If you have a near relative, so brother, sister, or parent who has the diagnosis, you have an increased chance of developing schizophrenia, but it's not definite. It's just increased, like vulnerability. So the biological bit is your genetic component, as well as that touches on brain chemicals that manage your mood and so forth, and anxiety, like serotonin and dopamine, but it's getting really sciencey. So I'll move away from the bio aspect. And then you have the psych bit in the biopsychosocial. So that's thinking about the psychology, and that's about our personality, how we respond to things. Are we quite extrovert, introvert, conscientious? Are we shy? Are we quite loud in our personality? Because all of that influences how we respond to mental health and how we respond to bad things that happen to us. And then the social aspect is thinking about what is happening around us. Actually, if we've been living in maybe cramped housing and so forth, it's difficult maybe as a teenager to have a space of your own. And therefore, when you're going through your hormones, going all over the place, wanting to be accepted by your peers, your social context might make it difficult to cope. And then we also have spiritual, and it's being acknowledged that although there's a biopsychosocial contribution to mental health, there's also a spiritual component, which many people from the BAME community, that's Black, Asian, minority ethnic people, also hold, that actually our distress can be spiritual as well as biological or psychological or social. But the reason why we hold like a broad understanding of mental health is that you can't definitely say you have psychosis because your mum did. Actually, it's more broader than that, and we have to consider everything. And also that moves away from stigma. So I know my heritage is Ghanaian, and I know that very much so previously, there's this thing of if you marry into a family where maybe their parents have mental health, you're going to catch it too. And there's much more to it. It's not just genetics at all. It's your environment. If your mum has got those severe mental health difficulties, and say you grew up in an environment where food and water and shelter is plentiful, you go to a good school, you have a strong personality of kindness and being extrovert, actually you can negate those symptoms and it won't affect you in life. So that's why we hold that kind of broad biopsychosocial, spiritual component, because we can't definitely say it's one thing. It's too complex to say that.
Okay, so some of us are now, we're with you. We're with you. You've given us a lot to digest. So I'm gonna let that marinate in people's minds, because there's plenty. You said plenty, and we understand it very well. Very good. So I'm going to let that marinate. But as it marinates, I want to go to a really interesting question that has come through the live comments. And one of the questions is asking, how do we turn suffering in our lives into something which is positive? I thought that was a really profound question. How do we turn some, suffering or, potentially negative experiences into something positive? I'm going to Jeremiah, I don't know whether you're pointing to me because you've done that mistake before, so I'm going to go to Charlotte on this one. At least she's been clear with me.
Okay, so I'm going to say a little bit about my story, just so I can give some background information where I'm coming from. So while I was going through cancer, I had a chemotherapy drug and it shut down my whole nervous system. I couldn't walk, I couldn't talk, I couldn't even swallow, and the doctors didn't know if I would walk or talk again. And at that point, it would have been quite easy for me to give up and just say, that's going to be my life now. But instead, for me, I felt like one of the main things that really helped me turn that suffering into something more positive was putting the actual intention there, knowing what I wanted and setting goals for what I want, and not just kind of giving in to that feeling anymore. When someone says no to you, it was about going, who you saying no to? So it's about having that strength inside, inner strength, and putting intention. Or you can either, again, like Dr. Yvette said, having that faith, that a relationship with God to really hold on to really help pull you through. So those are some of the things that really, I would say, help take you from suffering somewhere positive, actually putting that intention there and believing in something that helped me through. I did a lot of visualization that helped me imagining where I wanted to be and believing I could actually be there. So yeah, that's what really helped.
Before I kind of unpick what you said, Charlotte, does anybody want to add to that? How do we turn suffering into something positive? Jeremiah?
Okay, thank you for for coming to me. Because I wanted to add to that, because for me personally, this is one of the biggest secrets facts about me. I can't cry because my lacrimal ducts are actually fused shut. So when it comes to expressing that emotion of sadness and suffering, right now I won't be able to express it as fully as someone would be able to, as they do when they're crying. So one of my actual outlets is actually exercise. So again, this tying into the personal training aspect. So every time I'm feeling that overwhelming sadness, I always turn to exercise, and it doesn't even have to be something strenuous like going to the gym. One of the best times that I've had to de-stress is literally taking a walk with my friend. I have a friend who lives nearby in London. If I'm having a particularly bad time, I know in lockdown it will be a bit hard. Obviously, you have to maintain social distances, keep 2 meters apart, stay safe, stay well. But then just having that walk, slow, calm, have a route, maybe make it scenic. I can't tell you how much I've just felt better from just having just that little bit of activity and that conversation. Like, it has such a profound impact on my well-being. Also, the other thing is food. No one is happy when they're enjoying it. I mean, no one. Sorry,
I
I was
like the
gonna
food.
say.
Talk about the food.
Yeah, no one is unhappy when they're enjoying their food, or like when it's a food. Who can think of a food that they like, and even though they're in a bad mood, they'll be like, I don't want, this isn't that great. No, if it's your favorite food, you will enjoy it. Why? Because it, again, it's that sort of routine. It's something you're used to. It's a comfort. You like it. Hence why people can get into comfort eating, because it's something that they use to deal with stress. But obviously we have to control that aspect. And but even just the process of cooking the food. So if it's something that's quite unhealthy, listen guys, although I'm a personal trainer, live your life. Just make sure you do the exercise afterwards. But find out what you need to prepare the meal that you enjoy. Go through that cooking process. Like even just doing that little bit could again take your mind off what's causing that suffering, because now you've got something to aim that emotion at and actually make you convert that energy physically to get something done. And then it's almost like a reward as well when you're done with it, because again you now get to eat it, and it's a sense of achievement as well that you've been able to actually do it. And then that takes away that negative aspect of now just being in a spiral about the suffering that you're going through. Now, as Charlotte said, it does take that inner strength to do. Like it's very easy to say it now when you're in a good mood, but then when you're actually in that situation, it is very hard to do. And I acknowledge that. So all I'm saying is always have in your mind, even if it's something where you write down just to remind you if you're in a bad mood, just something you can focus and aim at. Whenever you get into that situation, it's like a reminder for you to then see if you can work towards it. Take baby steps. Never try and leap if you can't. Just do something small, foot in the door technique. It might be, okay, you're feeling bad, you don't want to exercise, food isn't doing for you. I'm sorry, like that one, that one's a surprise to me. But if even food isn't doing it for you, think of what else you enjoy. Music can help. As Dr. Yvette said, faith can help. Even if it's just reading the Bible, or if you have other faith like reading the Quran, whatever faith you are, just doing something that just helps to center yourself and then just bring you back to who you are. And then once you've had that time to yourself, then use that energy to see if you can then slowly tackle that suffering, and then that way you can persevere through it.
Okay, thank you, Jeremiah. That was quite a comprehensive response there. But I'm going to go to Dr. Bismark. He looks very, very happy to talk about this. So I'm going to go to him, and then depending on how that goes, I might come back to you, Dr. Yvette, Dr. Bismark.
All right. I think Jeremiah and then Charlotte have done a very good job about how to cope with suffering situations. But I believe that both of them have these coping mechanisms, or are able to cope better because they understand actually what they are going through. They had an understanding of their situation. They're able to tell when things are actually going overboard. They're able to tell when they are getting into a really bad mood, and then they know how to actually alleviate that. I'm not sure it's something that they just woke up one day to, but it's something that they have had to come to terms with and then learn over a period of time. Now, I believe that anyone who has an understanding about their mental health or about themselves, and then know themselves, the things that sort of exacerbates the suffering that you are going through, or whatever situation it is. Maybe if it's an illness that you've had to deal with, an understanding of the illness itself, of the illness process itself, and then maybe of the whole natural history of the disease. For example, that, I mean, I'm a doctor, so I'll go back to the disease all the time, but an understanding of the condition that you are having, which is sort of being the threat to your health, will help you be able to actually cope better than when you don't really have an understanding of what you're going through. That is what I have personally noticed a lot with myself, and then with people that I come across. People who have insight and understanding about what they are going through are able to cope better. And so it's very important that platforms like this are created, where we get to talk and we get to understand some of the things, our mental health, and then that we will be able to handle ourselves better. But some people just don't know it, so they've lost it, so they're throwing tantrums, and they just don't know how they got there. But I believe that if they understand the process of how they get there, they are going to be able to cope better. So yeah, back to understanding, back to the discussions, back to the talks about the things that make us suffer and how we can cope. Yeah, that understanding bit, I believe, will help everyone to cope better. Yeah.
I think it ties in. Somebody's just answered the question, and it ties in extremely well with what you've just raised, Dr. Bismark, about understanding the situation, understanding where you are. And somebody's asked the question: should I go to a therapist for help or deal with my problems on my own? And the reason I've brought that to the forefront as you've been talking is because what do you then do when you don't understand your circumstance, when it doesn't make any sense to you? You've got this experience and you feel that things are happening to you, but you don't have that understanding. Does that then block the healing process? Does that block the journey of recovery? So, do I go to a therapist? Do I deal with problems on my own? How do I navigate my way through understanding what is actually happening with me or to me? Anybody want to take that? Dr. Bismark, you can take it, or somebody else.
All right.
Okay, I'm going to go to Dr. Yvette. I did promise to come back to you, and then we'll go to Jeremiah.
Thank you. I think it starts from actually developing a self-awareness. And that's something that when we're really busy, when life is happening, we don't have time to actually sit down with ourselves at the end of the day. Say to yourself, Yvette, what went well today? What didn't go so well? What was difficult? What caused sadness and what caused happiness? I think our lives before was very much, we're busy, we're on the go. We don't even have time to even look at the trees or the birds because I need to get to work. I need to get home from work. I need to go to sleep. Or before that, I need to eat my rice and then go to sleep because I need to wake up in the morning again. Everything is running on a tight schedule. And I believe that when we do that, we're not self-aware, we're not checking in with ourselves. And in a way, and this is what I really highlight in therapy, you are the expert of yourself. I never aim to go in therapy and say, you need to do this, you need to do that, because I am maybe the expert of the psychological theory, but you're the expert of yourself. Sometimes you know that things are not okay, but because sometimes the demands in your family that you have to work and keep going, or society around us, we don't have time to check in. So I think it starts from developing a consciousness, a self-awareness of ourselves. And some people do that through mindfulness or prayer or worship and seeing themselves and checking in. So taking time to, or even talking to a good friend or family member about things that are happening. I also think in terms of going to a therapist or dealing with the difficulties on your own, because sometimes it's one thing to acknowledge that, yes, I have mental health challenges. And then do I really need to go and speak to a stranger about my problems, who's probably going through their own problems anyway? And what can they tell me? What can they teach me? Sometimes it can cost money as well. NHS, it can be a long waiting list. And it's almost balancing up that I can hear a fresh new perspective from that person. One thing I like about therapy as well is that as a therapist, I'm not matching the emotional of my client group. And that's very cool. So if someone is very worried and anxious and distressed, I'm not going to be worried and anxious in that moment. And therefore I can help that person to think through what they're thinking and maybe bring them to a journey of clarity. Not that I'm imposing my own clarity, but take them along that journey. And just sometimes working things out with someone can be really helpful. But I think it is a big thing, again, to acknowledge that you have mental health challenges and then to seek help, because it's almost taking it further. But balance it up and weigh it out. And there's so many options out there that I think, especially us from the Black and minority ethnic community, we don't know of that therapy is available on the NHS, or you can speak to your doctor about difficulties. We just don't know. But it's time to develop compassion for ourselves. We deserve to be looked after. We definitely deserve to be looked after. And part of that is looking after your mental health.
Okay, great, thank you. You got an applause there, thank you. So I've been making little bits of notes as you've all been speaking. And today's topic is about managing our mental health during coronavirus COVID-19. And what I've done is, from all you've mentioned, I've kind of picked up a few buzzwords that has come through your descriptions of the last question, which was about how you turn something suffering into something positive. And especially during this period where there's so much change. There's the doctors that have been, what was that word, who have graduated through University of Facebook. There's those who have graduated through University of WhatsApp and University of Instagram and all the other universities. And there's a lot of information out there. So I'm grateful to you all that you've been very clear on giving some really, really useful information for how we're going to manage our mental health during this period. So Charlotte, you mentioned something about making the intention and visualization. So what we want people to be able to get out of today is not just an awareness about mental health, but it's actually, how do I improve mine? How do I support those around me? So Charlotte, if I can ask you a bit about the making intentions and the visualization, how do we practically do that? So somebody is experiencing a challenge, how do we do that? What does that mean in practice?
Okay, so some people do find it hard to actually visualize. But one thing I like to do is when I'm in a really, really good mood, I video myself, and it's like speaking to my future self. So then when I'm in a bit of a low mood, I watch the video because it tends to like give you that feel good emotion, because you almost feel like you're in that moment again. And for me, that's actually probably one of the biggest things that help me. And with the intentions, when I say that, it's more about if you want something and you keep saying, I really want this, I really want this. The question is, are you actually doing anything? Are you putting the action in? It's okay to want something, but you need to put the action in to get it. Setting many goals to like try and help you achieve what you want. You can't just keep saying you want something or saying, oh, why has God not given it to me? But He may have given you opportunities. He may have shown you things, or the universe, whatever you believe in, may have shown you things and signs, and you're not picked up on it. You just want it to kind of fall on your lap. That's about taking that action. I can't hear you.
I'm very good at modern technology. I muted myself. So I want to hone in on what you're saying, and the reason I want to hone in with you is because with the challenge that you experienced, and this strategy that you developed for yourself to get through it. If it's okay with you, if you would give us a practical example of where you have experienced a challenge or where you experienced that challenge, and using these strategies that you mentioned, how you managed to use them to get through it. You mentioned about when you were giving your diagnosis and then the issues with the chemo. How do you practical? So, leaving people with very almost like, this is what I did. I got this, this is what I did.
So what I did was I looked at every kind of area of my life. So when I talk about holistic, I mean everything. So looking at environment, looking at diet, looking at your friends, where you spend your time. So for me, I looked at every environment and then I saw what can I change. So with the diet, I was having more fruits and vegetables just because of it made me feel better nutritionally. But like Jeremiah said, don't do it until you feel like, oh my gosh, this is a chore. Do it because you enjoy it. Then with exercise, I found not going to the gym, it wasn't as helpful for me, but doing things like stretches, I found it more relaxing. So doing things like that every morning. Having my gratitude as I woke up. So saying I'm grateful for like 10 things that happened yesterday. I'll make a gratitude jar. I write down 10 things I'm grateful for. I put in my gratitude jar. So also when I feel low, I'll pick something out of the gratitude jar that I can read to help me kind of like pick myself up. The move environment, it was about being in nature. Now, if you've got to stay in your house, if you've got a garden, go in your garden. If you've got a balcony, go on the balcony. If you've got a window, open the window to get some air. Like, whatever you can do, because the sun, the vitamin D, that will just always boost your people. So today is such a hot day, and I'm sure everyone's feeling so much better than if it was snowing or something like that. And even the music changes the frequency we're vibrating. We're listening to something which is uplifting. So for me, it wasn't just one thing that I did. I found lots of little tricks and then I implemented them into my lifestyle. So if I was feeling down, I could go to my list and say, what can I do today that will lift myself? Watch one of those videos that I've recorded before, or listen to a music that I like, or expressing myself with dancing and singing. Can't really sing, but it doesn't matter because it made me feel good. So, you
You
know,
know, from your journey, you said you couldn't speak, so singing is definitely top of the gratitude list. You know, from a place where you couldn't speak, you couldn't move, and you're able to speak and sing to yourself.
yeah.
That go for it, sing, girl, sing.
So
Okay,
just
so
about making a list of things that really raise up what you're feeling and make you feel good. Laughter is one of the best things you can do when you're feeling down. Even if you pretend to fake laugh, you end up actually really laughing in the end. So it's it's all those little things that come together and help me.
they say, fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
Who knows? There's so much there, Charlotte. There's so much there. We could talk about that for hours on end. There's just so much there, and I hope people have been making notes. I'm blown away. I lost my moment there because I was just deeply, deeply listening to what you were saying and how practical. And again, the theory is great, and when you're feeling bad, cheer yourself up. But actually, what you're giving us is some really, really practical ideas of things that we can do. So knowing it, it's
Yeah.
great. You've actually got to go and do it as well,
Yeah.
isn't it?
And
Great.
not putting too much pressure on yourself either. Because of sometimes we put so much pressure on ourselves, or we look what other people are doing, we think, oh, I'm not doing what they're doing. It's
Mm.
what you're doing for yourself, set your own goals and don't base on other people's expectations of yourself.
Yeah. I feel better. I feel better already. Please keep moving with us. I will make room. Is there anybody that wants to add to that? Dr. Bismarck?
Second, yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, Charlotte has lived it. She breathes it. She eats it. So she said nearly everything that is there to be said. But let me home in a little on the healthcare professionals also who might be at risk of having some traumatic experiences, which definitely is going to have an impact on their mental health. Now, we are the front line. You get a scare every now and then. In Ghana, where sometimes things are a little bit under resourced, you actually have to sometimes work with very little PPEs. And so in your mind, every time you are thinking, am I exposed? Am I exposed? And that level of anxiety alone can have a huge toll on your mental health. And then watching people that it's not that bad here, it's not that bad in Ghana yet. But I mean, watching people go through the suffering and then all that can have a huge toll on you. And so I believe that for healthcare professionals, every now and then we should also just take regular breaks, which some facilities are actually doing. So just take regular breaks of your work so that you can just what's the word? Yeah, just
Let and
yeah,
refresh.
just refresh. Thank you. That's the word. So just refresh, refresh. Yeah, just refresh. Just come back to yourself because
Yeah,
really we are trained to sacrifice. We are trained to be out there for everybody. But then
yeah,
we also need to look out for ourselves and also our own well-being. So much as we want people to be safe, we are the only people who weren't on lockdown. We're still working. Some people were working or are even working extra shifts and all that. And that can really, really affect you. So just look out for your own self. Like Charlotte is saying, do the things that you enjoy between your breaks. Take time to breathe, take time to relax, take time to look out, take time to observe nature, take time to listen to music, take time to sing. Be intentional about the things that you do. Be intentional about taking a break, be intentional about the kind of food you are going to eat, and all of these. Be intentional about calling people, the kind of people you talk to, the kind of conversations that you even engage in during this period, because it has a huge toll. And we tend to lose ourselves because we're all about, hey, let's take care of people. But I think that in this period where it can get really overwhelming for most people, it's the time also that we also take care of ourselves and our own mental health. Yeah, that's the bit I wanted to add.
I can't invite you all to move in with me because they just wouldn't be room. But we'll do a rota system. Charlotte, you come for a few days. Bismark, you do the following. Yvette, and then Jeremiah, I'll need you every day because I've been eating a lot on this lockdown business. Okay, so I am exhaling as you speak because there's just so much wisdom and there's so much guidance and there's so much to take from what you are all saying. And I'm pleased, Dr. Bismark, that you address the frontline workers, those who are on the front line, because they are right in the midst of it all. Over the last few weeks, I've been supporting a few frontline staff, and the trauma. These are not just newly qualified people. These are experienced practitioners, and the trauma that this situation that coronavirus has brought is immense. They're in a position, and I think, we call the spade a spade. There's a lot of discourse about why BAME, Black and Ethnic Minority staff are worstly affected by it. But the reality is that they are at the forefront. They are at the forefront of health and social care. So of course they're going to be affected by it. Of course they're going to take not just the psychological unwell-being to their homes, but actually if there are any physical health implications, that will also go to their home. So I'm really pleased that you address the issue of frontline staff. And I think, well, for England or for those in London that I've spoken with, whilst there is support available, there is the pressure practically of doing things that there just isn't time to take it up. So there might be a psychologist that's been made available or counseling has been made available, but breaks are 10, 20 minutes in a very, very fast-paced, moving world. From your experience being, a practitioner on the ground at the moment, please help our frontline staff who are listening, or those who are listening that can share that information to friends and family or social media. What are your top tips? All I keep saying is that you've just got to be, as Charlotte says, look after yourself, think of you. But practically, from being on the forefront, what do you do? The resources there, but you just don't have the time. What advice do we give to our frontline staff?
Yeah, so thank you for the question, and I'm glad the conversation is gradually also moving into this space, because if we tend to neglect that bit of it and then assume that healthcare workers are all right all the time, because they should know better, they should know how to take care of themselves, much as they take care of other people. Practically, what I do, and I'm going to speak from my experience, and it's because it's not really hectic over here yet. We're not seeing in Cape Coast, particularly in Accra, it's more hectic. So I'm not really feeling that much of the pressure. But there's a lot of things that have changed. There's a lot more protocol, and so simple things that would take less time now take more time to do, because you have to go through a whole process just to ensure that you are also safe. And so you tend to get tired with very little things that you do. But appreciating a team, or appreciating the kind of team that you have, for me, helps. And then knowing how to delegate which kind of duties to other people also really helps, so that you are not the only one doing everything at any point in time, but you know how to efficiently manage your team that you are working with, so that everyone gets, for lack of a better word, an equal share of the stress. And then it's not on just one person. And then I also, like I previously mentioned, being able to take in regular breaks. And then what I mentioned from the beginning, having an insight that, look, this thing can affect you and you should be aware of it and you should be prepared for it. Having that understanding alone puts you in a better position, so that you're able to recognize when you are getting really stressed, and you can go to your manager and tell your manager, you know what, I'm getting really stressed. It's going to affect my productivity, much as they need you, but they need you to be well and to be efficient. And so I believe that most managers will be able to understand that. And practically for me, I think that is the way to go. And then also between the periods that you are working, some healthcare professionals are actually totally cut off from their family because they feel they are a threat to their family. You know, going to the hospital, all that exposure, and then coming back home to your family. You can find practical ways of interacting with your family, like by video calls, regular chats when you are home. Make sure you interact with other people. Make sure you are always in touch with the outside world. For me, what really helps me is my Instagram page, my Facebook page, being able to interact with other people who are not necessarily asking me questions about COVID-19, but they are telling me, hey, doc, I'm not able to come to the hospital, but I have this kind of headache. What do you think I should do? That alone takes your attention off everything. You know, everyone, we are all just being bombarded with so much COVID-19 information. It can really become a lot. So find other things that you do outside of the hospital that can also take your mind and then take some of the stress off your mind. Practically, that I believe is what is helping me. Yeah.
Okay, I can't invite you on to win. Honestly, people, you need to stop out doing this. Sorry, Dr. Yvette, go for it. You'll probably be moving in next week too. So yes,
I really appreciate everything that Dr. Bismark has said, and I completely agree. And just some of my reflections. I think, other than when I was pregnant and working in the NHS, I've never had a time where my clients are more concerned about me than I'm concerned about them sometimes, and they're asking me, "Are you okay? Are you safe? Have you got PPE? Are you going into work? Are you going out?" And it's very humbling because we're all going through the same scary situation, no matter your color, your creed, wealth, everyone is affected. But I think especially healthcare workers, and there's this big notion on the media and NHS at the moment that you're superheroes. And sometimes that's helpful because you definitely, all healthcare workers and NHS are doing an amazing job. And someone said right in the comments, Joelle, shout out to all the NHS workers, and I'm proud to be a part of the NHS. But we are human beings first, and we're likely to feel stress and pressure with everything going on. So just a quick statement that stress and the feelings associated with it are by no means a reflection that you cannot do your job or that you are weak. And that's so important because maybe there's other doctors and nurses.
Stop you there. I want you to rewind, say it slow so it marinates into our consciousness.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So to all the healthcare workers, those on the front line, bus drivers, postmen, refuse collectors, stress and the feelings associated with it are by no means a reflection that you cannot do your job or that you are weak. You are a human being, first and foremost, and show compassion to yourself. The same way it's affecting other people is going to affect you as well. And that hopefully is an encouragement that show how you're feeling. Don't feel as though you have to bottle it up because your team members are not talking about, they're not worried. They're like, let's just get on and do it. No, it's okay to not be okay. Really, it is.
Thank you. You can now continue what you're about to say. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure that that's sunk in to those who are anxious about, you know, reaching out for even the help that's been made available in the organizations. And I to people, superheroes, superwomen, supermen, these are fictional characters. And they are fictional characters made up by somebody's imagination. The reality for a lot of people is beyond that. There's so much more going on than just that imagination of that fictional character. So you are keeping us all going, but you are as important as the people that you're looking after. And it's using that first aid scenario. When you do a first aid course, they always say that the most important person in an emergency is you. Because if you do not put yourself first, everybody else is done for. Okay, if you rush in, you trip up on a cable, you fall, then both of you have no one to help. So as a frontline member of staff, as a caregiver, as a care worker, whatever your responsibility is, if you do not look after yourself, you're no good to anybody else anyway. But apart from being good to anybody else, you also matter, you know? Okay, right. Jeremiah, I promised I would come to you.
Thank you. um, well, actually, the bit that I wanted to interject in was a few conversations back. It
Right.
was actually about first, Charlotte with the positive affirmation. Like, I felt
Mm,
that that's actually such an important topic because even working with clients or day-to-day people, every person I come into contact with can name a million things that's wrong with them. The moment I tell them to tell me things that are good about them, they struggle.
mm,
Everyone is their biggest critic. So when it comes to mental health, that's usually the voice that's the loudest. So people need to now learn how to give themselves that positive feedback. Actually make, even if it's a list, or say it, ask a friend what they like about you, what made them, you know, be an acquaintance and then become a friend and then still want to be in your company, because I feel like that is a message we don't hear too much of, maybe because we feel like it means we're boasting or it's a pride. No, sometimes it's good to say you're great, we're great, come on, and it feels, it's nice to say that, but you might feel a little bit embarrassed, like, oh yeah, I can't say that in front of people. No, but listen, you are great. Everybody in their skin, in their respective homes, everyone out there who's persevering through this, you are great. And never forget that. Even at your lowest point, the fact that you've woken up, you've gotten out of bed, you've even thought of trying to tackle your problem, that is the first step to greatness. And that is something you should never underestimate, and always continue to persevere with that. Always think, what am I, even if it's eating, I'm the best eater here. I'm not gonna lie to you. I will out eat every one of you. That's why I'm a personal trainer. I have to keep my keep my body trim to make sure I can keep on eating. But even little, as comical as it sounds, that can have such a profound effect on your mental health. And then the next one I actually wanted to tackle was, should I go to a therapist? So as Dr. Yvette clearly stated all the points, one thing I do with people who are looking for a personal trainer, I told them, there's a common destination you're trying to get to. Do you want to figure it out on your own, or would you like a map? Your therapist is the map. That is not saying you have to stick with them throughout the entire journey, but it's saying, do you want to try and figure out yourself, or would you like someone to give you that guidance to help you get there just that much faster? It will save you a whole lot of hassle in the way. However, sometimes people prefer that struggle because that sense of persevering by themselves also helps build their character, and they like going through that struggle because it builds on their own personality, and then they learn lessons through that. But if you're feeling like that's all quite hard and it's quite overwhelming, then yeah, the map is always there for you to get to your destination. And yeah, that's it.
okay. All right. You have earned your place in my house too. All right. Okay. Well done. Um, oh, Charlotte, go for it. You're already moving in, Charlotte. You don't need to prove yourself anymore. It's okay.
I, I just wanted to add on to Jeremiah's tip about the self-love, because one of the things that are really good for the self-love and affirmation is when you wake up in the morning and you look in the mirror, look at yourself and really appreciate yourself. Tell yourself how beautiful you are, how amazing you are, how good your day is going to be, and really just love on yourself. Yeah, that's all I wanted to add.
So I just needed a moment to love on myself, because I think it's yes, a bit of love goes a long, long way. Thank you all so much. Okay, so I think we are going to start taking questions. So if I can, oh, here we go. Is anything big? Right. So question that has been put to us is anything being put in place in mental health, maybe new roles to prepare for young people, especially those depressed, over the unexpected delay in their studies. So this is a question about, say, young people who, due to the coronavirus, have not been able to, say, take exams, or there's been a disruption in their studies. Is there anything that is being put into place as potentially people in our lives? Are there things that we can do for those young people to help them during this process? And there's a mention about depression. I'm going to leave that to yourselves, who wants to go first. So it's about young people's mental health. unexpected delay in their study during this coronavirus period, and what's being put in place. So we've got people from London and Ghana. So Dr. Bismark, if you've got anything you can share from a Ghana perspective, please do prepare for that. I'm going to go to Dr. Yvette on that. From an England perspective, are you aware of anything that's been put in place for children and young people to kind of address those concerns?
I'm not aware of any specific separate service that has been put in place to support young people, but I definitely can acknowledge that a lot of them are feeling depressed. They feel very uncertain about what will happen in the future. But I know that there's CAM services that are still up and running and willing to support young people. It's very convenient now because
I hold you on. So I will hold the button for anyone that use acronyms and any fancy words. Who said CAMS? Who's coming? I don't know her. Who's that? What is that?
CAMS is the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Service. So in the mental health services are split up. So you have child and adolescents, and then you'll move on to the adults, and then you have the older adults. Alongside that, then you have the learning disabilities or developmental challenges. So I'm very aware that CAMS is still, child and adolescent mental health services are still up and running. They're still taking referrals. And I do believe that even if you put that into your web browser, child and adolescent services, it will come up with your local service. And hopefully there'll be resources there that you can access. In terms of you supporting your young people, whether you're a teacher, a parent, or a carer, I think it starts from acknowledging the frustration and the uncertainty that they are in, rather than jump to, but you should be happy that you're still alive. It's important that we acknowledge hurt and we acknowledge frustration and uncertainty, especially for those who weren't doing so well in the previous month, that they decided that exam time is when they're going to put their all on, and being worried about whether they'll be judged on previous grades or not. I think acknowledging their worry and uncertainty, and then if there's scope to do something active about it, can they talk to a teacher around support and thinking about exam grades and so forth, and also kind of rationalizing it and helping them to see how small this is in the big picture is quite important, and reducing the anxiety there. And I think then again, engaging with things that are important for them, or important to them, like talk to your friends and your peers, those that you're in class with, because I'm sure they're equally depressed or low and anxious about what's happening. So don't feel like so you're alone and you're the only one going through this.
Thank you, Dr. Yvette. Jeremiah, did you have your hand up at some point? Go for it.
I actually wanted to add on to that because so my other half is a teacher, secondary school, of an all-girls school, and from what I've garnered from her experience, I don't think there's much being done in terms of the mental health of young people. But then, which is what this conversation and discussion is about, is to identify these areas that actually need to be looked into. I feel like because everyone is worried more about the spread of the disease, like mental health is also taking a back seat. But I feel like the main thing is the uncertainty, especially with the exams. So like when it comes to the year 7s to the year 9s, they'll have a longer period to then have that structure put in place so that for them, they'll have a smooth transitions when it comes to those examinations. However, those from year 10 to 11 are going to be placed under an immense amount of stress because exams may not go on. So those are going to be grades that they'll have to fall back on their expected grades, which they probably would have done better when they've sat the exam. So this is just going to have a whole lot of pressure on them. However, that also falls down to us to help those. So I have two younger sisters, one who is in secondary school, so she's going through the online schooling. We can also help alleviate some of that stress that's being pent up by talking with them. This actually ties into a question I saw in the discussion. What can I do with my daughter now that she's not in school, but she's also got mental health issues? YouTube is your best friend, and particularly Just Dance. Yes, I'm tying it back into the personal training. So Just Dance, for people who had the Nintendo Wii, is a dancing game you used to play with the Wii. I can guarantee you lose a lot of calories playing that game. And if you choose your favorite song, you will have a great time doing it. Like, choose a song. Like there's a load of different variations of songs you can choose, and then enjoy it, and then just act out the moves, because the YouTube video will have the dancers doing the moves. Very simple to follow through. That's something you and your daughter can do. Even if you completely fumble on the moves, boogie to the beat for 2 to 3 minutes. That will get your heart racing, get those endorphins going. You've burnt your calories. And you know what? If you still don't feel a little bit better after that, at least you know you've gotten your exercise for the day done, and you can tick that off the list, and then you can go on to the next one to tackle down. I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Jeremiah. From a planning point of view, I can say for my local authority, so I have the strategic lead for mental health in the borough that I work for, and I can assure you that there is a discussion about actually what is going to be the mental health implication, not just now, but post-COVID. Okay, people's lives have changed in such significant ways. For people who have lost loved ones or lost friends, or hearing about the doom and gloom that's going on, and people are affected, they're thinking about their own mortality, they're thinking about their own health, their own death. And for young people, they are also as affected as adults. They also have a mental health need just as much as an adult does. And what I am working on is kind of developing a resource for our local population. And what we want to do is we don't want to wait for children and young people to develop that extreme level of mental health issue before we then swoon in, because there's not going to be capacity to take everybody if we wait. So there is a discussion at government level, at local authority level, at NHS level, on how are we going to support our children and young people. In terms of accessing support, really, really quickly, there's a lot of resource out there. So Young Minds, if you Google Young Minds, whether you're in England or America or Ghana, if you Google Young Minds has got a lot of resource for children and young people themselves. They've also got a lot of resource for parents and caregivers, so that they know how to support children's mental health and well-being. And one of the things that you can do as a parent or as a caregiver is be honest about what's happening. Don't underestimate how much they know. Children have got access to a lot of information in this day and age. Some of us that used those Nokia back then thought we had information, but it's nothing like we do now. Information is right available on their fingertips. They can check death rates. They can check infection rates. These can be quite anxious data for children and young people to digest. So as caregivers, be their information filter. Put it into perspective. What does that mean for us as a family? As a family, all this is going on, but this is the steps we've taken to keep ourselves safe. We are self-isolating where required. We are social distancing. We're washing our hands. We are having conversations about it. We're not going to say, oh, they're children, they don't need to know about it. Be honest about it, because the information is everywhere and it can be quite overwhelming. So Young Minds has got a lot of resources. You can Google it and you get lots of information. If you are also concerned, your children's school should have a resource that is available. I know schools produce their own resources that they translate from government guidelines. Contact your school. Do not suffer in silence. There's absolutely no way anybody should be without information in this day and age. Contact your child's school, contact your sixth form, your college, your university, your local authority. Every local authority has a well-being service that has been set up specifically to tackle the issues that is arising from coronavirus. Contact your local authority. Now, this is from an England perspective. There are listeners from other parts of the world, i.e. Ghana. Dr. Bismark, is there anything around mental health planning and young people in Ghana?
I think that the COVID-19 is pretty new to all of us, as it is throughout the whole world. And so if there never really was a plan to take care of the mental health of young people, such situations or pandemics like this is going to further expose it for us to actually know what is on the ground. Right here in Ghana, it would be difficult to pinpoint, or to the best of my knowledge, I don't know of any particular services that are available for young people. Most of it is online. And I dare say that the majority of young people in Ghana, students in Ghana, do not have access to internet, to these online facilities or online these websites, yes, that they can use to keep themselves in check during this period. It's a shame, but that is what is on the ground. And so for them, now that we are also social distancing, a lot of work will be dependent on the adults, the caregivers, the parents, to actually make sure, like you're saying, be their information filter. Also make sure they do bring on board some engaging activities that will also help them to not be so much anxious about school. I know a number of schools are still, running these online courses and all that, trying to still keep their students up and running so that the academic calendar doesn't really lag behind so much. But that's really just on the side of academics. But very little is being done mental health wise. It looks like most of the work is being left for the parents and the guardians, and especially now that we cannot go out, we cannot engage in all these social activities. It's a bit difficult, but that's the situation in Ghana now.
Okay, thank you for that. What I can do is, at some point, I'll share with Denta and Guba. Ghana has produced a list of counselors and psychological therapists, and there's a whole list of phone numbers that people can contact for mental health support. So at some point, I'll share that with Guba, and then perhaps they can forward that information to all those who have registered and use their forum to share that. So there is some support available and being discussed continuously. I know of it because I'm part of a suicide prevention group, a diaspora suicide prevention group. So I know that there is a mental health support being discussed and being delivered. So I will share that with Guba to share with you all. I'm mindful, I've got so excited about all this topic. I'm mindful that we've missed 2 questions. I'm going to take Priscilla's question, and then I'll go back to the workplace one. So Priscilla is asking, can the panel give some tips on dealing with bereavement, specifically at quiet times, such as evenings when you have less interactions? Now, I think this is quite an important topic we discuss because, I've alluded to it before, our lives have changed. People are affected in very many different ways. People have lost loved ones. And people have also lost friends, and they have heard of friends who have lost loved ones. It will have an impact on mental well-being. Any tips on dealing with bereavement? Who's going first? Don't all jump at once, just Charlotte.
I just had kind of one thing to say, which was maybe if you lose someone and you've not got that time where you got to speak to them, because I know a lot of people in hospital when no one got to go and speak to them or see them before they were passed. Something I did personally was I wrote a letter to that person, and I just talk about all the good memories I had with them. And yes, that's one of the things I did personally, and it helped me.
That's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that. And it's probably much more, it's even more useful at this time, especially at a time where people's bereavement practices has changed. At the moment, you can't have funerals as you used to. People are having online wait. And, when a funeral takes place, there's very, very limited number of people that can attend. So for a lot of people, the grieving process is all over the place. And as a community where we are quite together, especially when there is a death, where we come together and we visit people and we're there for people, it's kind of thrown a lot of challenges to people's grieving process. So that's a really, really useful tip there. Thank you, Charlotte. And Charlotte was talking about, writing a letter as if you are communicating with that person. Thank you, Dr. Yvette.
Yeah, thank you, Charlotte. And I do agree, grieving at this time is really complicated for all of the reasons that Dr. Pamela has mentioned. And I think it's important to note that grieving is never like a straight, like a dip of shock, numbness, denial, loneliness, and then we suddenly pick up again and we've resolved that. Sometimes it's messy and it's like that. It's even more complicated when maybe we can't grieve in the usual way. We have a lot of questions that are unanswered as well. And I know that there are some investigations going on, especially the coroner's willing to give more information about what led to that person passing. But I think especially when we don't have those social connectedness, but I think in a way we have to try and seek out as much as possible emotional support. And in the evenings, that might even be asking your friend or your family just to send you a voice note that you can listen to when maybe it gets quite dark and your emotions are really high, that you can listen to in the evening. I believe that practicing self-care is really important. So taking care of yourself, make sure that you're keeping a routine, you're eating, especially in the evening time, you're still going to bed. I think this is where if you have some sort of faith that really comes in and can be a great support during this time. So that could look like listening to worship or praise music or holy music if that's relevant. And I also think that you could also remember that person in such a positive way and think about how the relationship with that person continues. And I'm not speaking about the afterlife or ghosts or spirits, but that person has left an imprint on your heart and on your life. In what ways did you acknowledge those personal qualities of that person that drew you to them? In what ways could you keep that going? So you might have lost someone who always cooked and provided food, and that was a big thing to them. How can you keep that going? Can you do things in the name of that loved one by sharing foods with your neighbors or ensuring that you cook a good food for yourself that reminds you of them? And I believe that that will help you to keep that connection with that loved one that you've unfortunately lost during this time.
Great, thank you. I'm going to move on to the workplace question because now that we're in England, we're moving towards the potentially the phased return to work and to school. This might be on a lot of people's minds. So the question that we have from Frida Agria Champon is, great convo, that's not the question, but thank you, great convo. How do you deal in a workplace where well-being and mind health is not particularly acknowledged and there's a lack of support? How do we deal with that in a workplace? Where should we go to? Jeremiah, my friend. How do we deal in a workplace where health and mental health and well-being is not acknowledged?
I feel the need would simply be to raise the awareness, because I feel one thing I personally realized talking to my god sister was there's a lot of support in place, but people, especially people of an ethnic background, are very much unaware of. And it simply stems from where we're scared to ask, usually maybe because of the stigma around it, and also we don't know that help is available to us, and usually sometimes it's subsidized. We think we have to pay for it, so then that will also deter. So I feel like as a community we need to be more vocal about our workplace providing us with that mental health and well-being and establishing in them, because it's a key thing we need, because they're expecting us to meet a demand, they're causing the stress, but then they also need to have a system in place where it also helps to alleviate that stress, to make sure we're working our optimal level. So if it's not acknowledged, that one's a little bit harder to tackle. Maybe human resources would be the next step to go to make sure that the necessary people who need to hear that particular topic hear it and then start putting steps in place. Usually, again, it will be a harder task to do from the individuals who are making that cry for that help. Again, it will be that stigma around it. They don't want to seem hopeless because they feel like, oh, they should just power through it, because mental health is something, you can just get over it. Man up, to use the gender stereotype. But really, it's a lot more significant than we think. And you should feel 100% vindicated to go up to your boss and say, I am not feeling great mentally. I need you to help me to stay well enough to carry on doing this job for you. I feel like if you feel any fear or at risk that your job may be at risk of losing it, then they do not care for it. But then that is not your problem to hold. They're the ones that need to make that. They're the ones that need to be accountable for that. So I would say if they're not acknowledging it, use the proper channels to make sure your voice is heard so they can get the care that you need. But in no way belittle yourself for asking for that help because it's your right to have that help.
Thank you. And you said that with such passion. Thank you so much, Jeremiah. And just in case that people were not convinced and were not moved by that impassionate words that Jeremiah has just shared, I'll just drop it down for you. So at work, there is a legal responsibility for organizations to have, what is that word? Health and safety policies. And it's a legal requirement that organizations meet it. But not many people knew. I'm gonna whisper it to you. Don't tell everybody. But share widely. Organizations also have a legal responsibility. I'm gonna do a dramatic pause for stress risk assessment. It comes under HSE, Health and Safety Executive. Not many people know that. So your organization has a responsibility to keep you safe physically while you're at work, but there's also a stress risk assessment that is within their legal responsibility. I'll just let that marinate and move on to the next question, unless somebody's got anything to offer further about the workplace one. No, we'll move on. Okay, so Jiagge, thank you for joining us this evening, has asked, or has made a statement, social media is easily accessible these days. Do you guys think social media have a large influence in people's mental health? I alluded to the doctors and the physicians of Facebook and WhatsApp. It's called, what's it called now? Infodemic. We are at an infodemic where there's a hoard of information. Do you think social media has a large influence? Charlotte, I will come to you. Your hands have been up since yesterday for this question. Does it have a large influence in people's mental health? Over to you.
Okay, I'm going to tie in with another question that I saw pop up earlier that we never got to answer, but it was along the same lines. I think we do and we can, because sometimes you get such an influx of things coming in and it can be hard to kind of block it out. Sometimes we just need to take a social media detox if we are finding that it's affecting our mental health. But also, you've got to be mindful that most people on social media are only posting what they want you to see. They're not posting like their trauma or anything bad that they've gone through. And we can't walk in other people's shoes as we don't really know what it's like to be them. So with all the pieces of the puzzle, it's hard to really create a picture of someone else's life. And we're all unique. And when we learn to love all sides of ourselves, the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever it is, we tend to stop worrying so much about what others are kind of doing. Yeah, not that. You're muted.
Social media, wonderful question, and then I mute. Okay, sorry. Does anybody have anything else to add to the social media effect?
Just very, very quickly, because I think the next question is very interesting as well. But I think social media, especially for news, if you're using it in that realm, and Twitter and things like that, I think to limit the amount of social media that we're kind of tuning into at the moment. We have a lot of more free time in our hands, but it doesn't mean that we need to use it on social media. If you find yourself getting quite anxious and then you keep reading, because it's so easy to do that, because that's all you're doing on the phone as you scroll through. We need to get to a point where we have to be aware of the impact that it's having upon us and limit it. Keep it to maybe 30 minutes per day, or maybe just check it in the morning, the afternoon, and the evening. You don't have to be on it 24/7 to be informed.
I remember to unmute myself this time. Thank you. So I think we're going to start to wrap up. There is a question about the gym, but I think Jeremiah has spoken quite a lot about the physical activity and how we can improve our mood and mental health. So I'm afraid that there's so many questions. We could go on forever, but time permitting, I don't think I can take any more questions unless my bosses in the private chat tells me otherwise, but I think we're going to have to wrap up now. And that leaves me to conclude by saying, what a huge honor it has been for me to join this conversation. My mind is buzzing with lots of information. I am excited because so many people have engaged with this topic. And, the amount of questions raised kind of confirms that people have an appetite for mental health and well-being. They have an appetite to discuss mental health. So perhaps it's not that in the Black community that we don't want to talk about it. Perhaps it's about creating the right environment to have that discussion. So that leads me to say, a huge thank you to Guba Foundation and GUBA Talks for allowing this to take place, for inviting these wonderful, wonderful guests to share their expertise, to share their insights. It's been a learning experience for me. I have absolutely enjoyed reading the questions. There's some really interesting things that has come out of that. So as we come into the end, I'm going to give our speakers one sentence. I don't have the power to mute you, but I will say, if your 30 seconds is over. What will be your last remark? Now, this year's Mental Health Awareness Week, the theme of that is kindness. So as we conclude the discussion, I want you to think about what kindness means, and especially for our mental health, and especially for during this coronavirus. And I'm going to ask you to be quite succinct and quite quick with your response. Kindness, mental health, coronavirus. What's that all about? Can I go first to Dr. Bismark?
Absolutely. I think my final words on kindness and then mental health would be, and again, I'll direct this to healthcare workers, those who are in the front line. Being kind in this period starts with yourself. Show that kind of kindness to yourself first. You also deserve to be kind to yourself. Know when to take a break and take care of your own self. I think that's it.
Doctor, you win 5 points. Very good. Well done. Who can beat that? Do you know what? I'm going to go with Jeremiah. Let's go, Jeremiah.
For me, kindness for mental health would be, yes, be kind to yourself, but also ask your neighbor if they're doing okay. I feel like that's one good thing that's come through the COVID. Everyone has been a lot more interactive with the people who are nearby. So ask your neighbor if they're doing fine, if they need anything, and let them know you're always there to help if they need you.
Great, excellent, thank you. And I will go with Dr. Yvette.
So very quickly, I'm going to turn kindness back to ourselves, because I do believe that we're only able to show kindness to others when we learn to show kindness to ourselves. So that might look like taking a nap. It might look like doing something nice for yourself, and also not putting pressure on yourself during this COVID-19. We just have to survive and come out of this okay, not learn a new skill and so forth, just survive.
Great, thank you. Charlotte. Not because you're my favorite, no. There's no favorite there.
I think everyone pretty much covered it, but just be loving to yourself, and also, treat others how you want to be treated. But yeah.
Okay, so if our audience would join me in thanking our wonderful speakers for their time, for their honesty, for their openness, and for engaging us this evening. So the next GUBA Talks will take place next week, Wednesday, 7 p.m. London time, 6 p.m. US time, and 6 p.m. Ghana time, and is it 1 or 2 p.m. US time? Wonderful, wow. So thank you for joining us. Mental Health Awareness Week, be kind to yourself. Kindness, I will take the words from Dr. Yvette, kindness starts from us. You cannot give what you do not have to give. Learn to be kind to yourself. And during coronavirus, just know that there is support available. If during this period of discussion, there has been topics that has made you a bit uncomfortable, or it has opened up some issues that you think actually maybe I might need some help with it. If you are in the UK, if you go to your search engine and type, say, talking therapies and your area, it will bring up a list of free NHS counselling services that's available to you. You do not need your doctor's referral to do it. You can access it yourself. So if you go to your search engine, you type IAPT, IAPT, or you type talking therapies and the name of your borough, you should be able to get a list of what's available to you. You will call them and they will be able to do an assessment for you. It's a free NHS service. It's a confidential counselling service with trained mental health practitioners. That's available to you. We also mentioned about Young Minds for young people to get information from. We have mentalhealth.org.uk. There's also Mind, which the umbrella organization that has the youth division as well. And if in doubt, if you are concerned, your GP, okay? Go to your GP, maximize your GP as a resource. And don't be fobbed off. Say, look, I'm concerned and I need support. And there is absolutely no shame in asking for support. Okay, if you don't want to do it on a face-to-face basis, there's a lot of online resources as well. All right, so from GUBA Foundation, from myself, I have been your moderator, Dr. Pamela Nyki. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you for engaging. Thank you for your questions. Keep well, stay safe, save yourselves. God bless. Thank you.